You know that feeling, right? When you get a new phone and everything just works faster. Apps pop open, games look amazing. It's that constant hunt for better performance for a phone that feels, I don't know, smarter, almost ahead of you, keeps us coming back. And that's exactly what we're digging into today. Google's rumored next-gen Tensor G6 chip, the one supposedly powering the Pixel 11. I've been reading these reports, and sounds like Google might be planning something pretty big. So our mission here is to unpack these Tensor G6 rumors. What does this potential jump to a 2nm process really mean? And, how could it shake things up in the smartphone world? We've got info from places like Gizmo Kina, Omar Sohail, Android Authority, Stephen Shank wrote a piece there, and even some tidbits from Taiwan's Commercial Times and China Times. Okay, let's get into it. Maybe we should start with the immediate picture, because the G6 story kind of builds on the G5. The Pixel 10 series, that's coming later this year, right? Maybe late August. And that's supposed to have the Tensor G5 chip.
That's right. And the G5 itself is actually a pretty foundational shift for Google. It looks like they're expected to move away from Samsung's manufacturing, from Samsung Foundry, and partner up with TSMC instead, using TSMC's 3nm process.
3nm.
Specifically, their second-generation 3nm, which they call N3E. TSMC has all these labels for their different tech generations.
Right.
And just doing that, moving to N3E, is already a decent step up from the 4mm Tensor G4 chip that's in the current Pixel 9 Pro.
Okay, so G5 is already a big move, shifting to TSMC, hitting 3nm. But then the G6 rumors, this is where it gets really interesting, like you said.
Exactly, because the core rumor for the Pixel 11 series, we're talking 2026 now, is that the Tensor G6, which apparently has the code name Malibu, is now rumored to use TSMC's absolute cutting-edge 2nm node, their N2 process.
2 nanometers.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, if this is true, is that it suggests Google might be planning to completely skip TSMC's third-generation 3nm process, the N3P one.
Wait, skip it. Just jump straight from the second-gen 3nm to 2nm.
That seems to be the implication. They'd be bypassing that next incremental step altogether.
Wow. That sounds incredibly ambitious. So, okay, the numbers sound impressive, 3nm, 2nm, but what does that actually do for someone using the phone? Well, what kind of benefits could that 2nm leap actually bring?
Well, if the reports are accurate, it's not just, a small speed bump. Compared to the G5, the Tensor G6 could potentially deliver up to, say, 15% faster performance.
15%, yeah.
And maybe even more importantly, up to 30% better power efficiency.
Heavy, wow.
Which is huge. And remember, that's on top of the gains already expected from the G4 to the G5. So it's a significant leap. And this isn't just about opening apps quicker. We could be talking about really advanced on-device AI.
Like what kind of things?
Think real-time language translation happening entirely on your phone, no internet needed, or complex stuff like video editing running smoothly right there. Basically letting the phone handle tasks it currently needs the cloud for.
Interesting. So making the phone itself more powerful for those complex jobs.
Exactly.
Okay, for the folks who love the technical details, who want to peek under the hood, what's the rumored architecture? What's making these gains possible inside the chip?
Right, so the rumored layout for the Tensor G6 CPU is pretty interesting. It seems quite specialized. Think of it like different tools for different jobs. There's reportedly one main powerhouse core, an ARM Cortex-X930 for really intensive single tasks.
The prime core.
Yeah, the prime core. Then 6 performance cores, Cortex-A730s for handling multiple demanding things at once.
Okay.
And finally, one small efficient core, a Cortex-A530 just for ticking over background tasks without draining the battery.
A very mixed approach.
It is, and that's supposedly paired with a 3-core Imagination CXTP GPU running at about 1.1 gigahertz, plus, the fast memory and storage LPDR5X RAM and UFS 4.0.
Gotcha.
So you put all that together, and yeah, it looks like a design aimed squarely at boosting both AI processing and high-end gaming performance on the Pixel 11, making those complex tasks feel seamless.
Right, a chip really built for AI and gaming. So let's zoom out a bit. How does this potential move change Google's position, in the big Android phone race?
Right.
Is this them trying to take the lead?
Well, it could be a really significant strategic move. Think about it. Qualcomm's next big chip, the Snapdragon 8 Elite 2, expected next year in 2025. That's still projected to be on a 3nm node.
Still 3nm.
Right. So if Google actually jumps to 2nm with the G6 in 2026, that could give the Pixel 11 a much-needed edge in that high-end Android market.
Yeah.
It could potentially make the Pixel 11 one of the very first 2nm flagship phones out there. Samsung's Exynos 2500 is also expected to be 3nm.
So Google could leapfrog them, technologically speaking.
Potentially, yeah. And it's not just about specs, it's about making the Pixel the phone that showcases the absolute newest silicon. That could attract developers wanting to build things only possible on that cutting edge.
Interesting angle.
And there's more fuel for this idea. There are reports about Google execs visiting Taiwan, seemingly to secure a longer-term deal with TSMC. Yeah, maybe up to 5 years, potentially covering Pixels all the way up to the Pixel 14. That suggests a pretty deep, ongoing commitment to this TSMC partnership.
A 5-year deal, up to Pixel 14.
Yeah.
Wow, that really signals a long-term strategy with TSMC. But hang on, isn't this cutting-edge stuff usually, well, expensive?
That's the big question, definitely.
Can Google actually afford to put a 2nm chip in the Pixel, given their sales volume compared to, say, Apple or Samsung?
It's a really important point. TSMC's reputation is rock solid, no doubt. But moving to 2nm, especially early on, could be very, very costly for Google. They just don't ship the sheer number of phones that Apple or Samsung do. So the cost per chip for a 2nm SoC could be significantly higher for them.
Right.
We know TSMC started taking 2nm orders back in April, and you can bet Apple, with their massive iPhone volume, was likely first in line to secure capacity.
So it's not just can they afford it, but does it make financial sense given Pixel sales volumes?
Exactly. It's like, putting a racing engine in a family car. It's powerful, sure, but is it the most sensible investment if you're not selling millions and millions?
Okay, so given those cost hurdles, are there fallback options? Or maybe conflicting reports? I feel like I saw something suggesting maybe TSMC isn't the only game in town for 2nm.
You're right. It's not necessarily a done deal. There are definitely counter-arguments floating around. One report actually suggests Google might go back to Samsung.
Back to Samsung?
Yeah.
After moving away for the G5?
Potentially, yes. For Samsung's own 2nm process, which uses that GAA, the gate-all-around tech, it's a different approach to building transistors. And apparently, Samsung's making progress. Their Exynos 2600 prototype, using that 2nm GAA, has supposedly started trial production. They're aiming for like a 50% yield initially.
So Samsung is also in the 2nm race.
They are. But then again, another report basically says, take this whole 2nm G6 rumor with a pinch of salt.
Ah, okay. Why is that?
Well, the suggestion is Google might look hard at the costs, crunch the numbers, and decide that TSMC's third-gen 3-emitter, that N3P node they might have skipped, might actually be the smarter play for the Tensor G6. Still advanced, but potentially much cheaper, saving them millions.
So stick with 3nm for one more generation to manage costs.
It's a possibility. It just reminds us that, rushing to the absolute newest tech node can sometimes lead to hiccups or unforeseen costs early on.
Okay, so pulling this all together, if these 2nm rumors do pan out, the Pixel 11 with the Tensor G6, it really could be that phone that feels like a leap forward. It could shift Google from maybe chasing the pack-in chip tech to actually leading it, at least for a moment, fulfilling that desire for the next big thing we talked about at the start.
It definitely has that potential. The excitement is there because it suggests Google is aiming really high, but, thinking beyond the specs, beyond just the speed increases, given this relentless push for smaller, faster, more efficient chips and the promise of, as we said, serious AI and gaming improvements, what does it all really mean for you, the person actually using the phone? Could we genuinely see on-device AI doing things we can barely conceive of right now? Or battery life that truly lasts for days, not just, all day? Could it fundamentally change how we even use these devices?
That's the really interesting question, isn't it? Beyond the benchmarks, what new experiences does it unlock? Something to definitely keep an eye on.